Hi everyone, Dylan Train here with the New Orleans Opera Association, and today I'm here to chat with two members of the creative team for our upcoming production, a semi-staged concert version of the first act of Wagner's Die Walküre, the Valkyrie.
Hello, I'm Sarah Meyers. I'm the stage director for this production. I am a freelance stage director. Home base is New York City. I spend a good portion of my year on the directing staff of the Metropolitan Opera, but I also do productions all over the place from New Orleans to Lithuania to everything in between.
And I'm Samantha Aldana. I'm the film director of the opera. This is my first time working in this medium, so it's been a really exciting journey for me, like kind of just learning the ropes of theater a little bit through Sarah. And but predominantly, I work in narrative film as a director and writer, most often based in New Orleans. And yeah, just really excited to talk to y'all today.
So this is a concert semi-staged production. How do you bring life to something that is not quite an operatic, fully staged production?
Great question. I'm actually thinking of it as, I've heard staged concert, but I'm thinking of it as sort of a tripartite experience. It's equal parts film, concert, and theater. And each one of those experiences, I would like the audience to feel like is a complete event. The film that Samantha has created is incredibly powerful and exciting in its own right. The concert, of course, will be incredibly powerful, but we're also going to bring a work of complete theater. And what I like about the idea of doing this cinematic theatrical concert, as it were, is that it forces us to limit the scenic elements, limit the spectacle, and really focus on the human beings and be able to go into the human and the psychological story, which is what interests me most actually about this particular act of Die Walküre and of the ring cycle as a whole. I'm most interested in the human beings / gods. I mean, the half and half a lot of the time. So I think that that's a real opportunity as opposed to a challenge. I mean, it's both. Challenges and opportunities are the same things, in that not having all of the, giant forest and trees or mountainscapes that you might have in a fully realized scenic production means that we really do have to think about every gesture, every look, every position on the stage. And we're using a minimum of elements. We're really trying to restrain ourselves. I keep thinking to myself, anytime I'm considering whether or not we need a prop or something else, do we actually have to have it? And if we can do without it, we will, so that we can focus on the people. And I think that will really help them to pop and bring the story to life on their faces.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, my next question is for Samantha. You mentioned earlier you don't have a lot of experience in opera, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
But you're a very prolific filmmaker. So when Claire—
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course. When Claire, our opera person, comes to you and says, "Hi, I'd like you to make something for this production we have coming up," what is your thought process from there forward?
I would say that after that conversation, I was really excited. I just gotten off of completing a narrative feature film that had been like a multi-year long project. And just, even though I didn't fully understand yet, like what we were going to create in the end, the idea of doing something that was more abstract or more experimental in its form, without knowing the content, just by default of being paired with another medium altogether, I just knew it was going to be the complete opposite kind of experience of what I had been focusing on and creating. And I was so excited to work with new kinds of collaborators and totally new stories, and just find a way to interpret that with, my knowledge of cinema and filmmaking. And, I was really just on board from the very first conversation. And after Sarah and I met and I began to hear her interpretation and the direction that she wanted to take the show, it was just so exciting to me. And I was like, okay, no, I got it. Now and it's been a learning process the whole way, because it feels like we're kind of inventing something that is unique. Like we don't have a lot of references, I don't think, for examples of this. And that's really exciting to me as an artist, is creating like a small space for something that feels fresh to exist. So yeah, I mean, it's been like every new chapter of the process has been like totally eye-opening and exciting. But yeah, at the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm down, but I don't quite know what's in store.
Looking through the behind the scenes pictures, I thought I saw some of our scenic studio people in them. Is this filmed at the scenic studio?
No, it's filmed at a local studio, like an independent studio in New Orleans called Channel Vivid, that some friends of ours run, that kindly let us, work in their space and build things like forests and pools of water. And so my co-producer and cinematographer on the project, Nick Shamblatt, and I were like, oh, we got it. Like we the two of us can like accomplish it all. But then when it came to a few of the visions that Sarah and I had, we realized that we might need to call in some scenic experts. So we reached out to Keith and Nathan with the New Orleans Opera, and they so like brilliantly came up with these plans to help us execute some of these bigger ideas that were much more than a two-person job. So they came in one day and just, built a lake that we could shoot as a miniature to make it look like a large scale actual space that we couldn't have access to, like in the logistically speaking. But yeah, they were amazing and really supportive. It was really fun working with them.
There is a photo of, I think it's you, Sam, in a car with a bunch of branches in the back. What's going on there?
What's going on there? Yeah. So this is like the silliest, I don't know, I feel like. So Sarah and I, in all of our very passionate brainstorming and coming up with ideas and palettes for each of the scenes and kind of settings in the story, we decided that we should have a forest element, not just a forest, but a forest of dead trees with gnarled roots. And we had tons of references for this. And a lot of them looked like the, just really beautiful trees that are in New Orleans, and, like the twisted oaks and, all of this. I was like, no, like I've seen this, like this is around, no, this is not going to be an issue at all to get. And so then I go location scouting and realize that it's July in New Orleans. Like, what am I going to do? Like all of these trees are like lush, like it's like a rainforest down here. Like, I don't know how. I was just like so excited about the idea of it that I don't know, I just wasn't looking outside or on another planet like you often, find yourselves when you're in the middle of creating ideas. And so I was like, well, we can't change the idea like that. I don't know, for some reason that wasn't negotiable to me. So I was like, let me figure out if I can make a forest. And so what I did was I went and collected dead branches that I would just find in like City Park or Audubon Park, and would just collect them, put them in my car. And the idea would be I would bring them into the studio and we would rig them up on C-stands on the same plane as the camera. So it was like the camera was, it gave the effect the camera was looking up at a forest of dead trees. But we shot it all, like we rigged them all kind of like parallel to each other. And then we were able to just face the camera forward. And it created the illusion, hopefully, that, you're looking up at all of these like dead life-size branches, or at least the idea, like the mood of that. And so that was where that picture came from, was that whole process of solving that challenge and coming up with like what I think is it definitely has a look to it that I think is different than anything I've seen before, which is exciting. And hopefully, it'll give that feeling to the audience for those scenes in which we're in that like forest setting, or when that's the subtext that we're leaning into.
Speaking of calling people in the opera business, we're usually auditioning humans, but I heard that y'all were auditioning snakes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can one or both of you tell me a little bit about snake auditions? How high are the standards?
Yeah, well, I can speak a little bit on the snake auditions themselves. Sarah, if you want to give any context for the role of snakes.
Information background wise on terms of where what the snakes are and how they feature in the production. One of the things that the film is providing, and I think it's a really exciting aspect of the film, is it's giving us a sense of a lot of the subtext and sort of the psychological elements that are found in the piece that you wouldn't necessarily get otherwise. It's kind of an extension of the mental state of the characters on stage. And the snakes, one of the things that the film is also doing is that it is showing both this incredible beauty that's in these works and in the music, but also there is darkness and a sort of sinister nature in the story. There is a real dark side to these stories that I think often goes underexplored. And the film is capable of showing both the light and the dark simultaneously, very literally. You can see the beauty in things that might otherwise be terrifying, and also feel the fear in things that are otherwise beautiful. And the snakes are a really great example of that. The snakes come from, in a way, there's one particular line where Hunding says of Sigmund that he looks like Sieglinde. He has the same worm, same snake gleaming in his eye. Der gleißende Wurm glanzt auch ihm aus dem Auge. It's just a passing reference, but if you look at the source material that Wagner was looking at in the folk stories, the race of the Volsungs or the Valesungs, Sigmund and Sieglinde, and their progeny, they're represented by serpents and snakes a lot of the time. They're constant references to the snake element with these characters. And I think that shows that within all of them, there is this dark element as well that kind of comes out in the incest and the way that they're pulled to each other. You also hear it in Wagner's music. There's a certain sinuous nature to the sound whenever these two characters are together or drawn towards each other. So it comes up actually a lot, and it actually, manifests at other points in the Ring cycle as well as the dragon, right? It comes to play as a reference or a representation of the greed element, which is a big element in the story as well. So the snakes and the serpents became something that for us were very powerful visually, but also sort of give a more metaphoric and symbolic exploration to the story, which is one of the great things about having the film element. And then the challenge was finding these snakes. And that was all.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, when Sarah explained just that to me, I was like, well, we have to have snakes, and we have to figure it out because it's just such an interesting layer that feels worth exploring and showcasing. Another aspect of the film is we decided to not have clearly seen humans, basically, so that we focus on the actors on stage. And so anytime that there was something more like an opportunity to represent the characters or the characters' emotions in things that were alive, it was really exciting to me. So it just felt really important to figure out these snakes. And I had a couple leads, and they kept falling through, very much like actual actors, very hard to pin down. But we finally found somebody who is based in New Orleans, and he is a doctor, like therapist, and he works with animals and people as a part of like recovery. And so I kind of explained to him, like cold called him essentially, and explained to him the whole thing with the opera and the film. And he was just so supportive of like the arts in general, And he was just like, yeah, this sounds great. And he sent me like 25 pictures of snakes, like different ones. I was like, oh, I thought you had like a pet snake that you like let your patients work with. But he was like, no, I have like I can't remember the amount, but like maybe over 30 to 50 snakes. And I was like, this is incredible. And so Sarah and I got to look at pictures of these snakes, and because we were shooting the film in black and white, it was really cool to get to see, you know, to get to choose the pad, like the colors and patterns of their skin, and knowing how that would like translate in the textures and color palette that we were using. So we picked 6 snakes that he brought to the studio, and we just kind of like alternated through them and shot for about 4 hours. And they were magnificent. They knew all their lines. No, they were really great. They're very camera friendly. And very friendly to like for us to work with, I guess, because they're so used to being around people that it was one of my favorite parts of the whole shoot, actually. And I'd never worked with animals like that before in film, so that was a first for me, which was exciting.
Wow. I'm so excited to see these snakes. Do you remember the names of any of them?
I don't. What a terrible director.
It didn't even occur to me that they would have names. They're like Snake 1 and Snake 2.
Yeah, well, I think his son names them. I don't think he names them, but he mentioned that there were. But yeah, it was really special, and just such a unique experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of textures and of color palettes, can y'all talk to me a little bit about contrasting black and white with color and the ways in which it's utilized in this project?
As we were looking at the material for the film, sort of inspirational material, Sam and I were talking a lot about what sort of a landscape we wanted to have and what the imagery would look like. And we would show each other things just sort of for reference purposes. And we noticed that we both kept gravitating towards black and white imagery. It was something that, one of the things that we talked about is that the story was very based in nature. There's a great deal of discussions about nature, about the damage that's done to nature, but also the way in which nature kind of pushes back on the human element. And that give and take was really fascinating to me. And the question of what's natural, what's unnatural, is one that I think comes up throughout the operas. And one of the things that's really fascinating to me when you take nature and you film it in black and white is it really changes what you're seeing. It can take something that looks beautiful and make it look very haunting, or take something that looks very ordinary and take it to a whole nother level. It brings it all into focus in a really exciting way. So there was something about using mostly black and white imagery that was compelling. And also for me, thinking about the entire visual experience that the audience is going to be having of the concert with the film happening simultaneously. We are, as I said, the concert element is not something I'm at all interested in hiding. I want that to be very much a part of the audience's experience as well, so that everyone knows we're at a concert. The orchestra's there on stage, and we're looking at them in their black and white, you know, with their black music stands in a white orchestra shell. That world already was a black and white world that we were going to be working in, and that was something that I think would help to unify the overall palette, to have the film and stage image speaking to each other in that way.
Yeah, and I think that just to add to like the moment of us deciding to put it in black and white, I remember that day really vividly because I love black and white films, and I even like especially modern films that are rarely being made that make that artistic choice to be black and white, and it be for like a motivated like purpose, but it's really hard to convince people to go with it, because there's something about, I think in film anyway, it's seen as less marketable or less appealing, or people maybe won't watch it as much as they would if something, you know, is vibrant and colorful, or just like that's just the norm. And I noticed, like Sarah said, like all of our reference images were majority black and white. And I was like, okay, I think that this should be in black and white. And I started spending like time thinking how to pitch to Sarah that this was like what we should do. And we hopped on Zoom later that day, and she was like, okay, I have an idea. I think it should be in black and white. And I was just like, what? How is that possible? And it's just like there's just been so many like serendipitous instances of getting to collaborate with you, Sarah, that have just kind of felt like magical in that way. And that was just such an example of that to me in like a just comical.
Likewise. It's so funny. I just to jump in there, because I remember the same day, but I remember the opposite, where I was looking at the imagery and thinking I was going to have to convince you to do it in black and white. Like you were the one who said, I was thinking black and white. It's so funny the way that memory works. But in any case,
yeah,
it definitely feels like we both sort of arrived at that point pretty much on the same day.
right. No, it's yeah, whichever way it goes, it was a fateful day, and the film I think is so much stronger for it, and it like I think will enhance the aesthetic of the entirety of the production with all of its elements. And yeah, and I'm really excited to see it on stage with the other thing, because that's like another interesting aspect of this project is like in film, you know, we would edit the film and then it would screen in a movie theater or a on you know a online platform or like a laptop or TV or computer at home, but and like that would be it. But this is like the live component of it is really exciting. Like we won't know what it all looks like together until it's happening, which is just something exciting that's very different than what I'm used to. So I can't wait to see it all fit together.
Talk to me about aspect ratios. So I was seeing some circular imagery. Talk to me a little bit about using a circle as a frame.
One of the fun things that we had to discuss, you know, in the creative process is that because this is a combination of film and stage experience, what does the screen surface look like? And how will it integrate with the space that's on stage? And we have the challenge, but also the opportunity to create the shape of the screen. So we could have made anything, and we talked about a lot of different possibilities, whether we wanted to project directly on the orchestra shell itself, whether we wanted to have, you know, the currently existing screen that's in the space, whether that would be the surface that we projected on. We knew we wanted to create something so that the imagery could be clearly legible to the audience so they can really see and understand what's happening, because there is a lot of valuable storytelling that's happening in the film. But we also wanted it to be connected to the rest of the space, feel like an organic shape, as opposed to a rectangle, you know, a letterbox thing, which feels very much like a man-made structure. Now, of course, the circle is also man-made, but it feels like it's more of an organic and unusual shape. And it also will literally have an echo. The circle above in the air with the imagery of the film on it will literally be echoed on the stage with another circular platform that the singers will be on for their action. So the two spaces are connected, one dark, one light, in order to create a sort of yin and yang mirror image. There's a lot of mirror imagery within the film itself, but also a certain essential doubling that's happening between the film and the theater.
I'm so excited to see that. So talk to me a little bit about mirrors and glass and shooting through things.
Yeah, so that was a really fun discovery in our prep in talking about like the character and subtext of the story and how so much of it is you know, connected to these characters' narcissism and like the just it's just really creepy stuff. And you know, Sarah, you can speak more to that, but I was just really inspired by the approaching the literal like actions and choices that the characters were making through these like design elements and props of shooting through things like mirrors and, things that symbolize like self-obsession and narcissism, and also like the duality themes throughout the just it's similar to like the snakes, but it's things that aren't alive. Like, how can we show these themes visually through through elements in the art direction, and how can we affect the cinematography? That's something that's really important to me in filmmaking, is like, it's not just shooting one thing that symbolizes it. It's how do you take each level, each layer, through the camera, to the subject matter, to the art direction, to the color palette and tonality. It's like all of those things. It was really important to me to try to tap into these bigger subtextual themes that are going on. And so the mirror stuff, that was like one of the first ideas that I feel like was on the table. Like, we have to utilize these, kinds of objects, and then like shooting through them. Those are all things that kind of were more organically developed on the day when we were filming, and just interacting with the things and the camera, and seeing like what felt interesting.
Expanding a little bit on what Sam was just saying, it's one of the darker elements to me of the story, or perhaps one of the darkest, if you would, is the incestual relationship between Sigmund and Sieglinde, that they are drawn to each other because of how they look alike, because of how identical they are, which, I've heard many people talk about how you can overlook that or get swept up in their romance, but I think that is a very important part of why everything goes wrong, and that love, that incestuous love between a brother and a sister, is something that has been engineered by a narcissistic father who abandons them and creates them solely for the purpose of solving his own problems. It all goes back to Wotan's needs and what Wotan wants in this world. And what they recognize in each other is also this father who, disappeared on them when they were very young, and then created a whole world around them that would reject them, so that the only other person that they can love in this world is each other. So it's from an abusive and an abandonment place that these two find each other. And that idea that similarity is what draws two people together is also, I think, a very limited perspective on love. It's a sort of a perversion of love, that the only thing you can find is someone who is exactly like you in this world. And it's one of the ways in the opera where I see the element of nature being taken and twisted. The natural affection between a brother and sister turned into something that is not healthy, that leads towards, ultimately, everybody burning in flames at the end of the whole ring cycle. So it is for me one of the darker elements. But as I said, we're trying to explore the ways of showing that uncomfortable aspect of the story, while also maintaining an awareness of this poetry and true emotion within it, because they really do love each other. They do need each other, and they find that. And so whenever we could use the mirror as this psychological extension of their experience, it sets the viewer somewhat ill at ease, because you're not sure what you're looking at or how you're seeing it, but there's still compositionally and aesthetically a really compelling image that's created, that's beautiful in its own right.
Playing with that interplay between what is beautiful and what is hard to look at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I can't wait to see it all. It's been such a blast creating this with this team. It's I can't wait until the big day.
I am likewise thrilled. I can't say enough about what an exciting collaboration this has been. I have worked with projection before, but this is different. This to me has really been a marriage of film and drama, and very soon to be the concert component as well. And that has been really exciting, to be able to put these elements together and to see what comes of that, what sparks, what inspiration comes of it. And I think what I'm most excited about having in real life very soon is a chance to experience this opera in a new way. I really think that this is going to bring a fresh element to this work through Samantha's eyes, which has brought so much inspiration to me. So I'm excited to see that live.